Two hands that can beat as one. Now we are quit.
ice are under my skin. I can feel the wings trembling. They would save me from falling. Waves are bringing me back to the land. 100 hands are around me, but they would save me from falling. See the birds flying so high. I would like to be with them. They would save me from falling.
Okay, everyone. Our next talk is about to start. It is titled Introducing Ubuntu Core Desktop. Presenting that talk will be Oliver Smith and Ken Van Dyne.
Hello, folks. Oh, that works. I'm Oliver. I'm the product manager for Ubuntu, which is quite a challenging task.
Ken Van Dyne, engineering manager, Ubuntu Desktop.
And today, we wanted to spend a little bit of time sort of introducing you more formally to something that we're working on, which is Ubuntu Core Desktop. And sort of to put it into perspective a little bit, Ubuntu Desktop today has millions of users, and with all sorts of different kinds of use cases. So you've got students, you've got gamers, you've got hobbyists, people learning web development for the first time, administrators, research scientists, and it gets even more complex because all those types of people are using Ubuntu Desktop in all sorts of kinds of organizations, from aerospace, fast food restaurants. You see Ubuntu Desktop in points of sale, things there, the VFX industry, education, and at home, which is probably where a lot of us use it as well. And so that is quite a large combinatorial matrix of personas that when we build a product like Desktop, we need to think about providing value to every time we iterate and improve each release. And so rather than target individuals or individual use cases, we think about these things in terms of values. We think about things like choice, hardware availability, HP, Dell, Lenovo, thinking about things like RISC-V, thinking about the Raspberry Pi, thinking about virtual desktops. Quality, I think, speaks for itself and something we keep driving to raise the bar on. Support, enjoyment, performance is something that we spend a lot of time on. One of the most important qualities of Linux is the way it brings out the most in your hardware. Privacy, security, these two things go hand in hand, and certainly recently with 2310, there's sort of different areas of the stack that we focus on to increase security, from our TPM-backed FDE to the way you manage PPAs, and then going further to think about the sort of enterprise management case in terms of how do you manage Ubuntu Desktop in a world where there are sort of different fleets of devices doing different things. And really the other thing is, like, how do we look to the future and how do these qualities manifest in different ways going forward? And I think with Ubuntu Core Desktop, this is a new kind of alternative way to experience Ubuntu that really plays up and emphasizes different parts of these things and delivers something unique to our existing matrix of users, but also the potential to broaden that appeal to an even wider audience. So, Ubuntu Core Desktop, what is it? So, it is an immutable, secure, and modular version of Ubuntu Desktop. And it's basically building on all of the work that we've done with Ubuntu Core in the IoT space that we've been building up over 10 years to extend that up to a full desktop experience. Now, when you think about that, that's a lot of work. There's a lot of different problems to solve. And so we're gradually building up that feature set over time, starting with things like thin client or single-purpose use cases, extending to the home user, to the gaming experience. And then really, our long-term goal is to build something really robust in terms of the developer experience, using things like LexD to have a container-based development workflow that still plays nicely and interacts with your host OS and the apps that you have on there. Ken, would you like to talk a little bit about how Ubuntu Core Desktop is built?
Sure. So one of the key things we had to think about when we were building this is we're not just building Ubuntu Core Desktop. We're building a series of components that people can use to build products out of, which we will, of course, build a product out of as well for Core Desktop. But we can think about enterprise use cases where an enterprise IT shop may need to build something that's custom for them, that has a set of apps that they need to deliver to their users. So we had to think about this in a modular approach, what all the little pieces we needed to go together here. So, some of the things that the key building block here is the boot base, which is actually Ubuntu Core. This is the root file system that the system boots. This is well proven. Ubuntu Core has been around for quite a while now. It's very robust. We had to build on top of that. Another component is the kernel, obviously. This is also delivered as a snap. We have a gadget snap, which is also another Ubuntu Core concept, which defines things like the bootloader, what the file system is going to look like, security settings, encryption, those sorts of things. And of course, snapd, this is what manages the entire system, right? And then, of course, applications on top of that, which these applications may require different bases, because you may be running Spotify, which is built for Core 20, which is focal. Those sorts of things, right? So we had to have the ability that you can install any of these apps and they will just work. And then, of course, the Ubuntu desktop session, which is where you get your GNOME desktop session that you're used to using on an Ubuntu system. And we put all this together with a model. So there's a declarative mechanism to kind of define what goes in your system. And then that is signed, and there's a trust that's built in there because there's an assertion that says you have validated this is what you're giving to your users for security. Next. So a couple interesting things about this, like you can imagine being a snap. Many of you have probably seen snap channels and tracks and things like that, right? I'm not going to go into all those details, but you can imagine maybe you're a gamer. You install Ubuntu Core Desktop, and we have a gaming optimized kernel with some things turned on or what have you that you may be interested in having. We may not be shipping that by default to all of our users, but you could very easily switch to this gaming track for your kernel. And then your system is using this other kernel. Same thing with the desktop session. The desktop session provides a customized Ubuntu experience of GNOME, but maybe you want KDE. You could install KDE on your system. Or there could be a KDE-based core desktop, or Budgie, or Mate, et cetera. So you could build your own solution by dropping in different ones of these components and get a different experience.
Yeah, and you even have things like, with our different snap tracks, you can roll certain parts of your system, right? You could think about taking a desktop session, moving that to an edge channel, getting the latest updates, while everything around it continues to be robust and stable, right? So it's sort of pick your own adventure on some of the risk you want to take, depending on which aspect of the OS that you worry about. So these are some of the things that sort of to take that architecture and bring it down to earth. These are some of the things that I think make it very cool. Obviously, the stability is hugely important, and I think this is a big factor of both quality and accessibility when it comes to helping users get to grips with the Linux. Our atomic updates mean that you either apply your update all at once or not at all, so you don't end up with this sort of partially updated state and have to go back and unpick those. And obviously, because it snaps, because they're confined, because they bundle their dependencies, you don't have to worry about conflicts when you're installing sort of different levels of software. With security, we're building on a whole bunch of stuff that Ubuntu Core has already started to develop and starting to think about how we make that accessible in the desktop context. So we've got things like TPM-backed FDE, which we're also providing as an option in the sort of classic Ubuntu desktop experience. We've got things like Secure Boot, we've got recovery. Having that chain of trust really means that you know exactly what's on your system and it's been signed and it's replicatable. And if you're getting that version of Ubuntu Core Desktop, it's exactly the same as someone else's version of Ubuntu Core Desktop with the same model. And obviously, with the confinement of snaps, it means that if malicious software gets onto your system via an application, for example, then it cannot spread to other applications or your sort of base OS. The composability, I think, is really exciting. I'm not going to spend too much on this because I think Ken's already talked about it. But you can also think about, you don't just have to switch and mix and match things. You can take stuff away. So if you really want something that is a pure single-purpose device, if you think about making a till experience or a digital signage type solution, and it's about which actual parts of that desktop experience do you actually need to deliver that and only create the actual minimum device that you need to deliver that service. The manageability, so if you think about the administrator experience, like what they want is a fleet of devices that are consistent and similar and identical, and they don't have to worry about the quirks of individual machines. They don't have to worry about managing updates that didn't roll out over here but did over here. And because the updates are atomic and they can be rolled back, you can actually be more ambitious about rolling out updates, because if something goes wrong, you can roll that back. You don't have to then go back and unpick all of the dependencies that rollback has sort of left behind. Privacy, I think, as I said, goes hand in hand with security. There's a few things that we're working to build on around privacy, specifically with the Snap experience, not just for Core Desktop, in terms of how do you manage and grant permissions to snaps. And this is something that we're playing around with and exploring at the moment, making sure that the user is aware of exactly what their snap has access to and able to tune and tailor that going forward. And so yes, really what we're creating here is extending the spectrum of Ubuntu Core, starting from that IoT use case. We already have sort of kiosks, single-purpose devices with things like Ubuntu Frame, which is based on Mir, but you can now start to go, okay, at some point you might transition to a full sort of desktop stack over there. And I think as we start to build this out, we really want to end up with a sort of rich development experience in the same way you might use Ubuntu on, say, WSL, for example. Ken,
Yes.
have we made it yet?
Yes, Ubuntu Core Desktop does exist. We are not quite ready to release it on the world yet, but it's close. So, you know, it's not all business. We do enjoy using our computers. As many of you have probably seen, we have been delivering Steam as a snap now for about a year. Some of the reasons we needed to invest in that sort of thing is to make sure it works in this type of environment, right? Also make it as portable as possible and work on as many devices as possible. So some progress there. Native and Proton games do work on Core Desktop in the Steam Snap. Drivers, well tested on Intel and AMD graphics. NVIDIA is not quite there yet, but we are working towards that. Some of the things that, well, I'll get to that in the TPM slide, actually. Of course, support for popular controllers, things like Xbox controllers, PS4 controllers, those sorts of things. Steam controllers just work. Productivity, got to be able to use your machine. I've actually been using mine as my daily driver. Yeah, that's a good idea. So the camera works, mic works, audio interfaces all work. Bluetooth works. Use a Bluetooth mouse all the time. External displays, I have a dock at home I plug mine into, it works. Till, thank you. Cups. Driverless printing just works. We still have a little bit of work to get all the things that may require proprietary drivers to work, but that's well in hand. Till's taking care of that stuff. We're in good shape. All right, so for the development experience, this is where we have a bit more work to do, but that's okay. We are including LXD by default, so you can spin up a container and do most of your development today. We already have that. We have a kind of a prototype user interface in front of LXD that lets you spin up a container, via a GUI that lets you choose any distro you want. If you want an Arch or whatever, it'll create it for you. It hooks up the GPU and all those sorts of things, mounts your home directory all seamlessly at startup, which is very nice. We don't quite have the ability to launch graphical apps in it yet, so like you can install a Deb or VS Code as a classic snap, for example, in one of those containers, but we're not able to display that on the system yet, but we're getting there. We're also planning on doing some work with IDE integration. So if you want the VS Code experience, imagine the WSL type developer experience where you're running VS Code and it's executing stuff inside of a container. It'll be a very similar experience. So we're going to do some work there. We also want to deliver more terminals as snaps. So if you prefer to use Terminator or Console or whatever your preferred terminal app is, we would like you to be able to kind of pick and choose. Right now we're limited to just one, but we need to do some work there to enable that because obviously developers have opinions on their editors and their terminals. Management. So we've got some really good progress here. We have some stuff we kind of got right out of the gate based on Ubuntu Core, immutability, and everything's confined, right? Because it's all snaps, read-only file systems, everything's contained. We do have TPM-backed full disk encryption. The reason it's marked as yellow here is because with Ubuntu Core, you can say you want to prefer encryption or the model must be encrypted, et cetera, and at install time, it just does it. What we want to do is enable that through the installer so you can say, I want to choose to encrypt or not at install time, and we don't have that yet. And the bit I mentioned on the NVIDIA slide back there is, we still have some work to do for delivering NVIDIA drivers in a way that will work in a FDE kind of environment. Snapshots, recovery, and factory reset, we just get that being based on Ubuntu Core. It's awesome. This is very robust, proven technology, and we have all that today. We're going to do some work with the landscape team to make sure you can manage fleets of these machines, create reports, see what your vulnerabilities are, those sorts of things, what kind of assets you have. And we also need to do some work for Active Directory login, kind of the enterprise use cases. when will it be available? So I mentioned, we're not quite ready for everybody to go out and use it. It is out there, but we need to do a little bit more work to get proper installable ISOs. Right now, we're still doing a little bit of installer work there. We want to set up some testing infrastructure. For classic Ubuntu, we have automated tests. When a new daily image is built, it runs through some automated tests before promoting that to the current. We need to get some of that stuff hooked up. We need to get some kind of release management practices in place for the various snaps that we depend on to control when those things go out to the stable channels and that sort of thing. And of course, we need awesome, awesome documentation. And we're going to work on that.
That's it.
That's it.
Do you want to do your and finally?
Oh, yeah. Before we take questions, this presentation was done on Ubuntu Core Desktop.
We have 5 minutes to answer your burning questions. Let's hear them.
Hi. What's the commercial story about Ubuntu Desktop? For the regular Ubuntu Desktop, it's clear, free for the first 5 years, you pay for extended security maintenance. But for Ubuntu Core, it's quite different.
Yep.
What's that of Ubuntu Desktop Core going to look like?
I mean, I think the way that enterprise experience occurs with Core is specifically tailored to sort of that IoT use case. So I wouldn't imagine that that would transfer across. I would prefer that we had a business model that was very similar to the classic desktop. I think, to be honest, it's early days here. Like, what our priority at the moment is to make sure that we can have a build that we can share with everybody here that allows you to do the things that you would expect to do from a desktop. What we don't want is to have a build that you sort of boot up, try, it sort of works, it sort of doesn't, close it again and come back to it in a year. We want to create a sort of minimum experience that people can really get the sense of what that's going to look like. I think going down the line, there will, we'll probably try and mirror the sort of classic desktop commercial experience. Some of those use cases are slightly different though, right? If you're thinking about it in, say, a thin client use case, or in a kiosk use case, or in a point of sale scenario, then it's about what makes sense for those different purposes. And I'd probably less think about Core Desktop as a product offering and more as a set of tools to essentially build different types of products for different specific use cases. So, a bit of a vague answer, I'm afraid, but when we have something that we feel delivers on that experience, then we'll articulate more on how we might deliver that in an enterprise scenario. Hello.
Will there be a cloud login required to use Core Desktop the way there is for Ubuntu Core right now?
No.
no.
One other question, since that was so quick. You mentioned TPM-based full disk encryption, which kind of made my hackles rise because my only experiences with that have been with BitLocker on Windows, where updates are very likely to change the state of the TPM and require you to go desperately looking for a recovery key for your full disk encryption.
Yep.
Have y'all done anything to make the experience suck less?
Personally, I quite enjoy my BitLocker recovery key being backed up to my Microsoft Outlook account. There are some quality of life. I can't really talk to the difficulties of an experience like that. We are looking at different ways to manage your keys, and we're also making sure that this is one of the reasons why we put out a TPM FDE-based option in 2310, is making sure that the architecture that we've put in place to avoid updates sort of changing the signatures and things like that from causing issues down the line. We really want to make something that's extremely robust in that instance, and we do need to be flexible to support updates and changes and essentially sort of reseal at that point. There's a few things we're working on at the user experience for individual users and the user experience for sort of enterprise users. How do you back up those keys? Where do you store those? Is something that we're sort of actively investigating and working on at the moment.
Oliver, you mentioned that something like a kiosk application might be typical. When I think of what power of a computer I need a Raspberry would do. Are there any plans to port this also to ARM?
I would absolutely love to be able to have a Raspberry Pi-based version of this. So that is something we're actively looking at. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to deliver that, right? We build snaps for ARM. We have an ARM-based desktop image for the Lenovo X13S. I would say that would be something that would be fantastic to be able to bring out when we release that sort of first developer preview. So that's something we're looking at. No promises. Certainly, I expect to deliver a Raspberry Pi experience of this, for sure. Anyone else? One at the back.
Loaded question. I understand this is built on snaps. Are there any plans to support alternate containerized application formats like Flatpak under Core?
No.
Yeah.
It wasn't a trick question. It was just an honest one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, we have containerized elements of the system. Containerizing within containers, it starts to become a little weird. You know, bear in mind though, one of the things that we want to do is have a LXD environment that's nicely mounted that allows you to install debs. At that point, you can install whatever you like as an Ubuntu container, right? So I'll leave it at that. There was a question at the back. Yes, hello.
Hi, are system images, like the core system images, reloadable without reboot?
Reloadable without reboot.
Reloadable? Oh, well, so when the core, I think what you mean is like the system needs to reboot to apply the update, right?
Essentially, something like in NixOS, for example.
Yeah, so the base snap that I was talking about there, the boot base, when that gets updated, yes, a reboot is required because that is basically the OS level bit there. It is delivered that way. Ubuntu Core for like an IoT device is typically designed to automatically reboot when that automatically refreshes. We've done some work there to kind of prevent that. So if you're on a Core desktop machine, you'll get a notification that there's a pending update that requires a reboot. And when you choose to reboot it, it will apply the update.
But it's worth thinking about, you know, because of the modularity of the system, not every snap component needs to reboot to be updated. And so because the system is broken down into those snaps, it's only that base snap that's going to force the reboot. It's not the applications and things on top of that. So you don't have to, you know, update for everything to preserve that immutability. Anyone else? We are sort of on time.
Yeah.
We spoke so fast and we had so many slides, but we did it. One more.
Will it support canonical live patch?
That's a really good question. I don't know actually how that works with the kernel snap. They are. It's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
then we shall certainly
Yeah.
have a look into that.
Oh, and actually I forgot to give a shout out here. Alan Pope here has installed it on his Steam Deck, and that screenshot on my gaming slide was from his Steam Deck. And he did bring his Steam Deck here with Core installed on it. So Core Desktop running on his Steam Deck.
Okay, I think we're out of time. Ken has his laptop. Ping him if you want to have a go for yourself. And if you have any more questions, feel free to grab either of us if you see us wandering around for the rest of the weekend.
Yes, I have a dedicated test laptop, not just mine, that I brought with me for people to play around with. So find me, you can get your hands on it, you can install software on it, poke around, see what you think.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you. So now we have a short break. Our next talk will begin in about 5 or 6 minutes. So next talk is at 5 p.m. Where do we go? Am I still live?
The old libraries go away. And you may not be able to launch your next app until you reboot, which is not the case with this. It's Atomic update, so only when you reboot will log out and log back in. Underneath does this new thing get updated. Oh yes, hi. So that's something I think is the kind. Because
Nice to meet you. Great presentation, by the way. I didn't want to demonstrate my ignorance, but I was thinking about the full diskless experience. Is this one of the use cases that we were talking about in the kiosk? Because I go back to the times when Sun Microsystems.
Okay. So you can now enjoy the where you want to
network,
Yes.
I don't know how I told me. Because I don't know that much about the
Okay, our next talk is titled Ali ROV Submarine Drones. Giving this talk is Hanmi Taboada.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the venue. And I am Juan Taboada. I'm going to introduce you about how I built Ali ROV submarine. First thing that we need to talk about is about a ROV. What is a ROV? A ROV is something, is a vehicle that we can drive under the water. It's nothing that we can get in. It's a vehicle that is independent, and we can see on our screen, on Google's, and we can see what's going on under the water. Everybody that you are here mostly are coming because of the open source, and the seed of what we do all is the passion. The passion for sharing, and the passion for producing software that we can share with everybody. We can get feedback from that. And it's a basic thing when you are evolving in this world. So this is what the main thing that brought me to make the submarine. I am a scuba diver. I am actually have the license for deep diving. It's 40 meters. And what moves me to make this project is the passion for water. Is to be able to share what I like so much, what is going on under the water, to be able to share with people that I love, that I like, and my friends. There are people that can get under the water, but there are some others that cannot, because of conditions or whatever. So first thing that it happens when you get to the water first time is that you don't know nothing about the water. You have been swimming on the line of water, but you don't know what's going under. And it's a totally different thing. The first feeling when you start breathing under the water is like you can stand there, and it can start as long as you want to. But usually not longer than 45 minutes until 90, maybe 2 hours. So that was one thing that shocked me in the beginning, because it takes so long to prepare everything, to set the scenario so you can get to the water, equipment, the course, and the knowledge, just for 45 minutes or 90 minutes. So you had to make that time worth. So when you go to dive first time, if you need a license, and there are several licenses. The most common is PADI certification, and is the open water diver is the first license that you get, the first certification, and it gives you access to the first 18 meters. So that means that with a bottle, you can rent a bottle and get under the water until 18 meters. With your insurance, because if you do it by yourself, everything what happens, it will be on you. And then there are another certification is advanced diver, 30 meters, and finally the deep diver. After that, there is a technical diving. It's for professionals, mostly. So how to break that limit of 45 minutes, 90 minutes? Making your submarine. If you make your own one, you just can go avoiding all the preparation that you need. You just take your submarine, like you can take a drone that is flying. You plug it to the computer, put it in the water, and it's done. If something happens, it happens to the drone, not to you. You just pull it back and repair or whatever happens. So for that time, to make it worth, you better make a plan. It's like you are going somewhere, and what you see on the line of the water is just a reflection of the sky, and everything is blue on the top line. But under the water is like when you are on the mountain, and you can see rocks and hills and caves and things like that. So when you are going under the water, you have to know what you are going to see, because you can face the problem that you get disoriented. You lose the orientation very quick. You don't get used to. We learn to get orientation under the water, but in the first dives is normally. And especially when you dive in the first place. If I do it in the first place, I need somebody to instruct me about that place, how it's going to be, the geography under the water. Another thing that is makes important to have a plan because you had to predict your air. You have air in the bottle, and that has to last until you are out. Actually, we had to live always with a reserve. So to have that air, you had to make a good plan. If you are too deep, you are consuming that air very quick. So you had to be prepared for that. Maybe you are having too deep, and when you're coming back, you have to stop. You just cannot go out from the water. You have to stay in until 5 meters, 3 meters, and you have to wait 2 minutes before leaving. It's just a very short distance, but the pressure, the difference of pressure is quite big. What do you see is what you get. When you are under the water, everything is blue. This is this is a photo of one of my scuba dives, and this is actually my wife. And what you see is blue. Maybe you see 15, 20 meters far. If the water is very clean, a little bit farther, but never like when you are outside the water. When you are in the hill, you see far, okay, we can go there and there is a river. No, but look that forest. Maybe we will try the forest. And you can see very far. Under the water, you don't have that. So somebody has to tell you about it. So sometimes it's just blue. Blue everything, blue. You are maybe at 15 meters, you have another 15 meters down, up, and you don't see any reference. So you have only your compass, and you have the depth of that dive in that moment. Another thing that I needed for building my own submarine is to have passion for computers and open source. This is actually a cluster based on OpenMosic, it was open source in 2001 when I was studying in the university, and that was actually one of my first projects, to make a cluster, computational cluster, based on OpenMosic. One developer of OpenMosic is Malawian, so I could talk with him about it. That was it. That was what sparked my knowledge about, my needs of learning about open source and everything. Another thing that you need for making a submarine, passion for researching and learning. It's not enough to start building with the knowledge that you have. You will have to research, read, ask, get to forums, and sometimes you just have to keep pushing and working and thinking why this doesn't work. I remember especially one specific moment of the project that I almost made me to drop it because nobody could help me. So you have to be open for that researching and especially for learning. Definitely, passion for sharing. You don't make an open source submarine without this. That's a talk that I gave in 2003 in Malaga. I actually was president of Malaga Wireless when the wireless networks were starting in Spain. We wanted to share wireless internet everywhere. And probably I was one of the first guys that had a wireless network card in Malaga. And we started making these antennas and making these talks so we could share the knowledge with people. So this is what is going on now. What is the main concept of the project that I'm working on? My main idea is to build a 3D map of the underwater, of all the areas near to the coast. I am not interested in deeper or farther from the coast. That's the reason. The reason is because it's for scuba divers. A scuba diver wants to dive in some place, it should be able to get a map with information, enough information and enough detail to know what's going on, where that person can go or dive, and what it will find. So my first approach was to take something that could scan structures, rocks, and hills. And that is, I thought, okay, so it can be a sonar, and then I saw that the sonar needs a lot of energy, and decided to go with fish finders. Fish finders are quite a good solution, but it gave me results like this. It's a cloud of points that then you have to merge, and you even don't have the texture of the sea. So it was very difficult to process, and I needed a big amount of electricity. So it didn't meet one of my approaches that was, I wanted something that didn't consume much. So I was trying to work with microcontrollers only. No computers and without putting electricity from outside, only working with batteries. So I met Measurum. Measurum is a framework that is software for 3D reconstruction based on photos. You take photos of something, enough photos, and it will help you to rebuild the model, 3D model of the object that you are scanning or of making photos. So actually, that was a good idea for me because I didn't need much to make my project work because I just needed some camera recording the dive and my ROV doing the paths. So Measurum, it was a great decision. Such a decision that based on these images that you can see, this is a video that I got from my friend Goiko Kremenik. He's CEO of Andalusi Robotic Submarines. And he gave me this video, and we decided to make a 3D model of it. And it came this. This is thanks to Measurum. So you can see that it's a square shape. It makes it easier to predict the proportions of the object that you are scanning. And there are holes and everything is not finished because of the video itself. The video, when he was diving, he was supposed to get into the pipe for scanning and watching what is going on there. But with the information that I had in the video, I could get to this. This is another video, also from him. And this is a pipe where residual water is being, after being processed, is pushed to the sea. So here we are scanning how is the pipe, if it's broken or if losing. For example, you can see that around on the sides there are algae. So based on the video and using Measurum, I went to this. This is a reconstruction that I made myself. You can see here the algae on the sides as well. There is a little bit of texture. And I had to add myself a little bit of reconstruction to keep the proportions and the shape. But it gives an idea of how it works. OK, let's talk about a little bit of theory. First thing that you need to know when you are underwater is the Archimedes law. The Archimedes law says that any object that is totally or partially immersed in a fluid is buoyed up by a force equal to the weight of the fluid that is displaced by that object. Okay, what does it mean? Okay, imagine that we have this football ball, and we are pushing it under the water. So when we push it under the water is going, of course, up and is flowing out. Let's imagine that we get all this water inside a recipient. We have it here. We get its weight. We measure it. So we know the weight of that water that went out. So that ball is being pushed up by the same force. What does mean? If you think if you push too deep, it will displace a lot of water. So the force from under will be too strong. So what happens with the ball is going up. So when the system is stable, when it's displacing exactly the same water than the mass of that object, then it's neutral. So this is it. It stays in a stable situation. No, this one is when the mass of the object is really small, but the force is being strong, so the object is pushed up. What if we make an iron ball? The mass is bigger than the water that can displace the same volume, so it will sink. It doesn't, the force is pushing up, but it's not enough. The mass will push it down. But there is another law. This is the law Boyle-Marriott, and it says that at constant temperature and low pressure, the volume of a gas mass is inversely proportional to its pressure. Again, what does it mean? We have a volume of 60 liters, and it's at half an atmosphere. If we compress it to the half, we reduce the volume from 60 to 30. What happened with the pressure is double. So we move from half atmosphere to 1 atmosphere. What happens if we do the same again? We compress it, and we divide the volume from 30 liters to 15 liters. We'll get the pressure to double again, to 2 atmospheres. So let's see all of this together. If we put these two laws together, we have an object that we want to make into the water, and this is the submarine, and we want it to go down or up. So when it's on the top line of the water, on the beginning, it's not deep, there is the volume of the object is the size of the submarine, and there is a force that is pushing it up. So in some moment, we will measure, so the submarine will stay at the specific shape. Whatever is the object, it will make, so it will be stable. It will be displacing the same amount of water than the weight of it. What can happen is if we go deep, many meters, the object, the submarine itself, will compress. And if it compresses, it's displacing less water. When it displaces less water, there is the buoy force is smaller. So at some point, it was stable on the top line of the water, but we went down, and it compressed, we lost the buoyancy, so it probably won't be able to come back. This is what happens in the Lego Submarine 2, version 2. When they made it, you see the surface, this is just a little bit, but enough to make the submarine not to able to come back. So that was the first the problem that they have. Of course, this version resolved it, giving more consistency to the submarine, making the tap not to, the cover not to blend. But still, if you move it to 5 meters, it will, because it shouldn't be that flexible. There is another approach on Lego Submarine version 4, which is using the syringe, is putting water in and out of the submarine. The idea is very good because it works very good in the first meters of the water. But if you go quite deep, the engine of that syringe won't be able to move the water out. Just will stay in, and the submarine won't be able to come back either. So this is something that you have to be prepared when you are taking a submarine many meters down. I'm talking maybe, you know, you go to 4,000 meters, they can compress, even the structure. This is what you see. It works, but it works on the line of water in the very beginning. I'm trying to make a submarine that is going to dive in the first 20 meters, maybe. Why the first 20 meters? Because the light of the sun, it doesn't get too deep. So most of the lives that is happening next to the coast, most of the interesting things when you are diving are happening in the first 20 meters. Usually after 20, 30 meters, you find just sand. So all of this together, again, it brings us to this image. If you look, there's a lot of information, but if you look at the depth and the relative volume, you will see that in the first 10 meters, you compress the air to the double. You get the double pressure, and your volume gets to the half. So you pass from one volume to the half of it in the first just 10 meters. In the next 20 meters, you do it by the third. So the most important compression that is happening here is happening in the first 20 meters. This is actually our point. I want to make a submarine that is going to dive there. So I had to take this in account quite strong. So with this, we are all set. And this is what I was trying to make. A fully digital control and telemetry, a submarine that can control and get telemetry from it in the digital way. I didn't want anything analogic. The two submarines that you saw before, they are analogics. They have radio control, and they are sending signals through the remote control. And I have this submarine that I was making, it was a ROV that is under the water, and you see a buoy that is on the top line of the water, and it's using GPRS to communicate with the boat or the sea. wherever is the computer, and it's using the GPRS network. This is valid approach because my submarine will work next to the coast, and next to the coast there are a GPRS connection. Through the GPS, I can get the 3D, the GPS signal, so I know where the submarine is, counting that there is a deviation from the cable. What else? I wanted to make it with microcontrollers. I wanted to learn from it, and I wanted to make the submarine to last as long as possible. So I didn't want to use computers, no Raspberry Pi, not small computers. Just I didn't want to deal with heat either. So I based the submarine, I based it in microcontrollers. Also, I wanted the wireless communication. That's the reason that is a buoy. I wanted the full structure to be able to dive through the water far away. This is one of the things that we have when I'm going for a mission with a professional submarine. This is one of the problems that we have. You have a cable from the boat, and the cable is going. And the cable maybe has 300 meters, so it's going quite far. But when there is a current of water, it's pushing the cable to the side. So you don't know exactly where the submarine is because it's bending, the cable is getting a shape. So in this way, everything moves together. What else? Wireless control and wireless video. So I managed to get both. I wanted to make a submarine that more people could build. So I wanted to, I was looking for something that could share with all of you, for example, and you will be able to build it with the tools and things that you have at home or at your hand, at least. So I started using PVC pipes. They're easy, they're cheap, and you have to be able to cut them. Also, I decided to go with low-cost hardware, my first Arduino kit. I knew electricity because of the university, but I didn't have a deep knowledge. I never had the chance to practice with it. So I bought my Arduino kit and I said, okay, this is done. It's going to be so easy. There are so many experiments. It has to be quite simple to make a submarine with this. And it takes a little bit longer. I started making my own boards. The one on the left is my first versions. I thought that the cable under, for example, were easier because I didn't have to mess with it, but I wasn't able to put it somehow inside any box or anything. That was very complicated. So I started making what you see on the right. That is a different approach of the board where I'm soldering on the top. Of course, the next step of this is to print it properly in a circuit. I went first time with Arduino Mega. I thought that would be enough, and it was enough. The submarine itself has inside an Arduino Mega, and it's managing everything. And for the buoy, I started with Arduino Mega, but I started having problems also with the memory. So I moved to ISP32. I said, okay, that's going to be a great choice. And again, I had problems with memory. I had problems with the stack and the RAM. They were mismatching one with the other and giving me problems. So Raspberry Pi Pico, it gave me all the solutions. So the buoy has a Raspberry Pi Pico on the top line. So we have Arduino Mega under and Raspberry Pi Pico. Why I had RAM problems? Because I needed to put into the buoy, I needed to put a library named Mavlink. It's a communication protocol that I used to talk with the submarine. The problem that I was having with it is that even if I reduce the number of commands that I was using and the commands that was accepting the submarine, still wasn't enough. So I moved the reception of the commands from Arduino Mega that was under the ROV, because for me, buoy was a gateway, and I had to move it to the top line. So all the logic now is happening in the top line. The Mavlink protocol is being processed on the top line of the water in the buoy, and the buoy is sending very simple commands in binary format to the submarine, and the submarine is responding on that way also. Okay, software requires a debugger and hardware too. This is what you see on the screen is OpenHandTech. This made my days. It resolved many of my problems during the development of the boards. For example, I had a GCM GPRS module, and when I was plugging it to the power supply to the home, it was starting and working perfect. But when I was using batteries, like drone batteries, that they can give a lot of energy just in a second, they was shutting down. It was sucking all this electricity from the circuit. Even if I used diode, I was using capacitors, it wasn't enough. Then somebody came and told me to look at supercapacitors, and I started using them. I knew because I was using the oscilloscope. It was giving me the information, enough information so I would see that spike and what's going on in the circuit. And I knew that Arduino was shutting down, actually, because there is a limit of 3.3 volts. But then Open Hunting wasn't enough, and I met PulseView. PulseView is just one of the best softwares that I have been. Both are open source, but PulseView is a great software for analyzing data with the oscilloscope, because you plug the sensor, you see the lines there happening, but you can say to the PulseView, you can say, okay, this is an E²C protocol, and CLC line is this sensor, and CLA is the other sensor. And he's decomposing, it's decoding the protocol itself. So this one helped me to find out some noise in one line that was producing one component with another, which helped me to resolve. That was actually with telemetry. It was working most of the time, but in specific condition, it wasn't. What can bring a digital submarine has a lot of data, because everything is digital. So I am an engineer. I can dump all this information back to the cloud, and then I can process it, save it, and do stuff with it, get the graphs. So I have this, but it's giving me temperature of seawater, of the batteries, of the engines, the amperage, the voltage, because that helps me to know how much electricity I do have in each batteries, on the buoy and on the ROV, and definitely the depth and everything. This is an extra thing. I didn't need this, but I had it. Why not? Why I use Mablink on the top line of the water or on the buoy? Why push myself to use Mablink? Because I met ground control. Thanks to this friend that gave me the possibility to pilot, to control the submarine, a professional one. I saw that he's using this software, and the software is free, it's open source as well. So I went through the protocol of Mablink. Mablink was providing telemetry, and it was reading the communication, the controls, the commands. So I could say to the submarine what to do using Mablink, and the submarine was answering with Mablink with the telemetry. And what about the video? The video, I was using this module. I was thinking, okay, there are drones, thousands of drones on the world, and they are using, they are driving drones far away, 1 kilometer. What is the technology behind? So it's 5.8 gigahertz. So I made these chips, ETA's 835, and I put that in the buoy. So with the SkyDroid, that is the small component, I plug it to my phone or to my computer. So I have like a camera that you have at home. I have the image that is producing the drone, the submarine. So what was the big thing there? That I was building a system that is supposed to be aware of the noise of the lines. And that was one way of thinking, because under the water, one of the problems is to get the signal under the water wirelessly. So on the cable, there is no noise. So I put the video signal from the drone camera, which is on Alioli. There is a drone camera from the air. I put it under the water, and I'm putting this signal back to this chip, and it's being sent wirelessly to the device, to my computer or the wireless, or the Googles through the phone, or both at the same time. This is a mini OSD. This is under the water. This is inside the ROV. And it's a chip that is giving the OSD information. Why? If I had the telemetry, I had the data logger, and I had the ground control showing me the telemetry, why I decided to add an OSD also? Because I didn't want to deal with the lag of the network. I wanted to have fresh images, and I am the one who is driving. I need to know what's going on in the submarine just on the right moment. So the submarines that have the cable, they are very reactive. You just move the submarine and you see the reaction on the program. But thanks to I was using GPRS and all the protocol and the microcontrollers themselves, it was being a little bit, there was some delay. So I decided to avoid it, introducing an OSD board, this one, that you can you can program it, and you can decide, okay, here will be the voltage and the battery and things like that. What is nice on this board is that it's working with Mavlink as well. So I killed 2 ducks with one shot, because I resolved with ground the telemetry, but also mini OSD was reading the same protocol. So this was almost straight. And what else? One thing that I get from this project after making it, and I will do it in the next versions, is the divide and conquer. I miss it when I was building the ROV. I wanted to make it with Arduino in the beginning, and later with the Raspberry Pi Pico. But Mavlink is a protocol that works like in a car. It's working in units. So it was easier to have a little module for the engines, little module for the telemetry, and all of them sharing the bus. So I could be able to handle each of them using just the same bus, and it will be easier. I wouldn't have so many problems with RAM. So next version will be it. Another thing that I was working on was the water analytics board. It's what you have on your screen. This is built, actually, this is real. And it can analyze pH of the water, it can analyze redox, oxygen in the water, conductivity, salinity, and several other things. So this is something I have to add to my ROV to be able to make the water analysis. And there is also a torpedo. This is a different project, but it's based on the same things. And it's an approach like Fast and Furious. It's a submarine which shapes is like a kind of torpedo, and it's made with ISP32, a MicroPython. And the point is to give a plan, and using the GPS is supposed to make a path on the water. So when I plug the water analytics board, it can't give me information about the big amount of the big area on the sea. And this is it. Also, I was researching about the propulsion system. Since the Ali ROV is working with propellers, this one is working with impulsion system, like a water motor that is pushing water outside, like maybe like a rocket. And what else? Other usages that we can do we can give to the ROV? Underwater photography. We can use it for body searching. We can study and add on invasion species. Actually, we have done with professional submarines. There are some algae that they are where they shouldn't, so we can act on them. Especially, like I said in the beginning, disabled people with underwater health condition and diseases. I have a friend especially that cannot go under the water, and he would love to. So I can share that, my experience, I can share it with my friend. Definitely game simulations, racing, wars and competitions. All of that is open. And finally, cheap bathymetry. Bathymetry is the science of measuring the depth of a place. So there are maps of it. This is a very cheap way of making it. But we are engineers, and it's not never enough. When this year, in spring, I was able to get my hands on the professional submarine. And I was able to open it. And with the knowledge that I got during the development of Ali ROV, I was able to discover the several components that they had. This is ArduSub. It's based on ArduPilot. And I knew it before, and it is working with P-Hawk. It's actually a great board. I decided not to use it in the very beginning because it was expensive. And it is expensive, in my opinion. But so I decided to go with Arduino because of the price, because I wanted to bring something that everybody could make in any part of the world. You know, 160, 170 euros is maybe a big price in some parts. So, but still, what I learned from here is that with just a Raspberry Pi and P-Hawk, you can have a submarine. Of course, it's not that simple. You need many components, but you have many of the drones that you are using drone on the air. They work already with it. So why not, you know? And this is alioli. That is so.
Otro. Y ahora los dos. Genial.
So this is it. Some questions? I think that they're giving, yeah.
So, are you planning to add the light to, because in most of the world the water is not so not so much light, and have you done it maybe already?
It will be some lights. Actually, the submarine has, this submarine, Alioli, has two batteries. Has one drone battery inside and one external of 12 volts, like I don't know how to call it. This bike, electrical bikes, so they have a little big one. So there are two batteries, and this one is providing the energy for the engines, the propellers, and for the lights.
Okay, and I will suggest you try to take the underwater flashlights from diving.
Yeah, it could be a solution. Like recording, put in the camera. It's the same solution. It actually is the best approach.
So I might have missed it, but what's the final price of this submarine?
That's a good question. Are we counting the hours that I spent, or because it depends? The average price is around 1,000 euros. It's not that cheap after all.
But what's the range of the price? Like,
sorry?
What's the approximate price?
1,000 euros, more or less.
Okay.
Do you have problems with cheap components and pressure?
That's a good question. No, because actually the components that I'm using for under the water, in the very beginning I was using a small board that is supposed to work with 14 atmosphere, but it was a board. So what I saw is that they are putting some silicon on it and everything. Silicon is protecting and it's not measuring fine. Then I got to the idea of thinking about where are other places that has a pressure sensor and works in the not so nice conditions. And I got to the engines of the car. The engines of the car, inside the engine, there are a pressure sensor for the oil. So they work in the very strong conditions. So this is what the submarine has. Some more questions? So thank you very much.
Juan Metabal. That was an amazing talk to end an amazing day, day one of the Ubuntu Summit. We have, that's it for day one as far as talks go. Fortunately, that's not it as far as fun goes. So we have our welcome reception. And if anyone wondering where that is, good news, if you were at the refreshment break, it's the exact same place, hall 1 and 2 right outside the doors. It's from 6 o'clock, so actually we have about 15 minutes. I was out there, I saw them moving around, preparing, so there's plenty of time for the hallway talk. It's from 6, it's for 2 hours, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It'll be appetizers, naps. It's not full dinner, so do make dinner plans later, but it will definitely hold off the hunger for a couple hours. So thanks for being here today on day one of Ubuntu Summit. It's great having you. I hope you enjoyed it too. We have 2 more wonderful days. The timeline is on the event page. You'll get an email each day, once again, with some highlights, just the highlights. So make sure you check that event page and go to your favorite talks, and I will see you all outside soon.